We are ready when you are.
All righty. Thank you, Ben. At this time, I would like to call to order the North Canton Committee of the Whole meeting, April 19th, 2021. The time is 7 p.m. Ben, would you please call the roll?
Member Schroyer?
Here.
Member Peters?
Here.
Member Revolt?
Here.
Member Soretta?
Here.
Member Fonte?
Here.
Member Foltz?
Here.
And Member Waring.
Here.
7 present.
All right. Thank you very much. First up, Community and Economic Development, Chairman Revolt. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Item 3A, we have an amendment to Chapter 1182, how our zoning map will be amended. And if you'll notice in your packets, we have a one-page description of this new process. This is going to do two things. The first is it's going to streamline the process for amending the zoning map. But I think more importantly is that if you get down to Section 2, notice that we're going to run this through, in part, the clerk's office. And Ben, feel free to jump in here. But the whole idea is to make sure we've got somebody who's accountable. We've had some situations in the past where perhaps changes have been made and they never quite make the map. So what we want to do is make sure that we have a smooth and simple process, but we also make sure that the changes actually get recorded. Ben, how does that sound?
Sounds just about right. What this really focuses on is lowering the application requirements.
Yes.
Making it easier and cheaper for members of the public to apply for zoning amendments, and then B, not making us handle information that we don't really need to make a zoning amendment, such as a topography map. At this point, we have access to that information easily and quickly through the auditor's website, so we don't really need people to submit topography maps anymore. And that's just an example of something we're getting rid of.
Okay, streamline and accountability. So thank you, Ben. Do we have any questions or comments from the council?
Sir.
If not, excuse me?
No.
Okay. If not, then I'll make a motion that we put this on the agenda for first reading next Monday night.
Seconds.
It's going to be on emergency, right? Is that correct?
It does. I mean, we can give it one reading Monday night and bring it back a second time if you'd like, Tom.
I'm good with the emergency. I mean, as long as it makes it easy, more cost effective and efficient for the consumers, I think that I'm all for that. Okay.
Okay. Perfect. It does have an emergency clause in it.
All right. So we have a motion and a second.
Mhm.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Motion carries.
Okay. Item 2 is we're bringing back, as we'd indicated, new Main Street district regulations. We've had some amendments from our work session, and if you'll notice on page 7 of your packet, we've got the changes. Ben's prepared a cheat sheet for us, and these will be incorporated next Monday night. So what I'd like to do is have everybody take a quick peek at this. And then next Monday night, we'll amend the ordinance for its second reading and insert these and then flip them over to the Planning Commission.
Tonight.
Yes.
The Planning Commission is on Wednesday.
Is on Wednesday.
Hey, Daryl, quick question.
Yes.
Don here. Did we mention anything? I know we were talking about the light poles with the LEDs and that. Is it possible in the appropriate areas to be able to go up an additional 10 feet to 30 instead of 20? Is that anywhere to be found in this section or any section of the Main Street district?
I don't see it.
That would be something, Pat, if you can help, maybe see if we can, like in the commercial areas where it's not right up against residential, and the people that went up to green where, you know,
Ben,
it really looks good.
Would you chase that for us for next week then? Okay. Are there any other questions or suggestions for this? And I'll come back to the map in just a minute. Is there anything else? Okay, then. I'm going to make a motion that we include these amendments.
One other thing, Daryl, if you don't mind, because I'm looking, I thought maybe we were going to go through these, but we're not. Okay. I did have some suggestions I didn't see on here. One would about fencing. You know, one of the best things we have in our community, or one of the most classist things, I think, is fencing with both stone and wrought iron kind of looking. And in here, the fencing is just either, it pretty much gets you away from that. It doesn't allow you to have a stone wall. And there's nothing like a nice stone wall around a restaurant with fencing that's wrought iron or something. So maybe I'm missing that, but I know that was one of my suggestions. I didn't see it in there. So I want to know why that didn't make it.
Okay.
And then let me finish here. So I got two of them on there. And then wrought iron is in there, which is great, but it doesn't have to be exactly wrought iron. Wrought iron is very expensive. So maybe with a look-alike wrought iron, that's made out of aluminum, so the word wrought iron sometimes could be, that's really, really expensive if you go with pure wrought iron.
Great suggestion.
Okay, so Mark, let me see if I can capture this for you. What you would like is to see something that permits wrought iron or an aesthetic substitute. How does that sound?
Yeah. Look-alike substitute, right?
Yeah. I'd say look-alike, similar to the look of wrought iron.
Okay, very good.
So if I may, I believe that we did try to incorporate Member Strata's suggestion. So what I've highlighted on the screen here, from your description, we understood it to be similar to like the fence that has been put in next to the St. Paul's parking lot, where it's primarily wrought iron, but then it has stone support columns.
Yeah. That's part of it. It could be a wall though that's like 3 feet high or 4 feet high, and then wrought iron on for gates. So I've seen stone walls, but then the gates are wrought iron looking thing. That's pretty classy. We don't even allow that for restaurants or anything like that. But
yeah, well, Mark, I don't think that a stone wall would constitute a fence. So I mean that would be governed by the zoning that deals with walls.
Well, it does on pools and that. It puts in there you can have a stone wall so fencing is, it's a what do you want to call it? Separation kind of a thing. So okay, so are you saying then, Pat? And I get it if that's the case. Someone can put a stone wall up and it's not really called a fence then.
That's right.
Okay.
I mean, it can be used. Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay.
Okay, we good, Mark?
Yeah. Again, though, I'd like to get back to what Ben said, though. That wrought iron kind of look, because I know, people always put it's aluminum now. It's not real wrought iron.
Mark, I'm looking at 113615, what's on the screen, and it is on page 15 of the packet. It's item 1136.15B. Wrought iron or wrought iron simulation fences.
Good. Okay. I didn't see it on the thing we had in front of us here.
Yes, but it is here.
Okay, good.
Okay. Let's keep reading this. Again, we need to knit. We need to look for these little tweaks. So we'll send this on to the Planning Commission. We'll send it with these changes for Monday night, next Monday. So I guess I need a motion to do those things, and I'll make that motion. Do I have a second?
Greta seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Thank you.
Motion carries.
Okay, item 3C is simply the change to we're gonna eliminate the previous map and language. I don't think that's particularly controversial. So going to continue down that path. Are there any questions about that? Again, we're just erasing from the books the existing language and substitute with the new.
No, we're good.
Okay, very good then. Do we need a motion? I'll make a motion that we continue this. Is there a second?
Yeah.
Mr. President, all in favor?
I'll second it.
All in favor, say
Aye.
All right. Hey.
okay. Let's get on to 3D. This is the one that we need to make a couple changes. If you'll notice in the cheat sheet, we're going to have some deletes and an add. It's at the very bottom of the page. What we're going to do is we're going to add a parcel to the Main Street District. This is the one that's city-owned on Stratovan property. This is the Stratovan properties. We're going to add those. And we're going to delete the parcels on Portage Street. And these are the residential properties that run from basically Hillcrest east to the school.
Hey, Daryl, forgive me here. What page are we on?
We're looking at the bottom of page, hang on a second, there's 7.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Okay, and we'll have those parcel numbers, but we're going to just clean up. We have some residents up in Doug's ward who prefer not to be included in the new Main Street District, so we're gonna delete those and leave them as is.
Okay.
Did I do okay on that?
Yeah, Daryl, do we have a map now to look at, or is that something that's going to come later?
It's going to come.
Okay.
I think the only parcel that is not going to be removed is the city parking lot, which is on the east side of Northminster Church. But everything else is going to come off and remain as is.
Okay. Appreciate it.
And I think that'll make everybody happy.
Daryl, Dom here. So let's say, for example, in Doug's ward, the residents, in 6 months to a year change their mind and think it's a good idea that they would like to be back in. What's the procedure to be able to do that?
It'll be just like amending the zoning ordinance. You'll have to come back and come in for a zone change.
Okay.
But again, that's a decision that the residents and the council will want to weigh. And I think one of the things we want to be mindful of, and I've often said this before, is that zoning exists to protect the people who make the initial investment.
Yep.
And we want to make sure that if those residents want to change, that it's something that is acceptable
Neighbors do. Yeah.
to the neighbors.
Okay. It's a good
Hey,
idea.
Ben, is that your John Madden scribbling?
Yeah.
On the rest?
This is
Is that your
He's-
teleprompter, John Madden, zoning map look here?
no, he's
Doug,
going to be sit after the meeting.
He doesn't even know who John Madden is, Doug.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I knew you guys would know. Well, who's doing that right now?
He was a
me,
big,
yeah.
he was
That's
a
your
big time wrestler.
Ben, you know John Madden, don't you?
I do not. Sorry.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh, right.
He's a UCF champion.
Tony Romo's kind of taking that over.
Well, yeah, you're right, Mark. You're right. Tony Romo is the new guy. You're right.
All right.
Yeah, thanks
So-
for drawing that out. That shows everything that we need to be looking at to change. Thank you, Ben.
So we'll get this squared away, but this is again what the map will be amended and adjusted. So if we don't have any further questions, we're going to add Stratovan to the north. We're going to delete the properties here that have been John Maddenized, and we'll pitch this over to the Planning Commission as well and have it for our next reading as an amendment. So I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
Hold seconds.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Okay, thank you, Ben. Thanks, Council.
All right. Thank you, Daryl. Okay. Next up, finance and property, Chairwoman Ware.
Okay, so this is going to be a conversation. I'll just start it, and then Pat is a great storyteller, so he's going to kind of explain the why we need this. And then, as we know, Dean is great with data and numbers and has prepared a lot of the charts. So I think it was almost 4 weeks ago that Matt and I met with Gina, Patrick, and the mayor. And we started to talk about the finance, and we started to talk about this and the need for a change in the levies to the EMS and the fire, and kind of where it was and what our thoughts were, what kind of the community maybe would think or not think, and how we had to discuss that. And then after looking at some of the data and some of the slides that Gina presented, we said, let's have the lawyers take a look at it. And so they then took a look at it, and then we got all that back this week. And now we'd like to present that to you tonight. You'll see and I kind of like starting with the summary, but because then we can go backwards. And so since 2018, when these were enacted, property taxes have raised 9.8 million. But ambulance fees have raised 5.26, and during that same time, fire and EMS services cost the city 26.8 million. So over the last 11 years, 7.2 million has been transferred from the general fund. And the goal would be to not transfer any of those monies from the general fund, because obviously Dominic likes to talk streets and Doug likes to talk parks, and we all have our things that we like to talk. Well, if we had that 17 million, maybe we could talk, more of that. And so there have been 24,000 calls for service over the past decade. So it's definitely a need our community has. Some other communities, and you've heard a lot of talk about this recently, is you've heard everything from dispatch moving to a centralized system. We've heard of fireplaces, right, subbing things out. So those are options, but our community has said, no, we want these things in place. So how do we pay for them? And that is what we are going to talk about now. So is that a good lead-in? At least we're looking for placement on the November 2nd ballot. So we've backed this all up, and when we need to have this, and all the readings that we need to have and everything. So that's where we'll all started. Are there any questions at this moment before I let Patrick?
I think it would be helpful. This is Patrick, that we go through the PowerPoint that was.
Yeah, I want to.
And then that might answer some questions along the way, or it might stimulate more questions.
Yes. And I thought, were you going to do the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. That's perfect. All right, thanks.
Ben, there we go. All right. So if we talk about, where we are today. So we'll kind of look at these screens together, but I want to take, proper time to go through this. So our current fire services are supported by a $500,000 continuing levy. And that has been in place since 2013. In 2021, we estimate that that's going to raise about $187,000. And then this will need to be supplemented by, more than $500,000 in transfers from the general fund. And keep in mind, as we talk about these things, that some of the discussions that you've had over the last year, when we've talked about the CRA and the DRD and these things, what we're really talking about is that, North Canton suffers from a lack of increasing property values over a 10-year period. And that keeps these revenues, relatively flat. So all the things that you have been doing for the last year to queue up a very aggressive economic development plan about bringing in jobs and capital investment, this will help us in the long term. But for right now, this is what we're facing. So EMS services supported by a $1 million continuing levy in place since 2013, and then a $1.5 million levy, which is a 5-year levy, and that expires in 2021. These EMS levies are expected to raise about $935,000 this year, but we will be supplementing that by an additional $600,000 in transfers from the general fund. Now, North Canton has had a practice regarding ambulatory billing services that we quote unquote soft bill. And that means that, for city residents, that EMS will accept, the city will accept whatever their insurance pays and not bill residents for the balance of the bill. And that's the way it has been for a considerable period of time. But keep in mind that, what those insurance companies pay, often is $250, $500, and you're looking at bills that range, in the thousands. With everything that we have to do today, with all the technology that has to be transported on every run, because we don't know for sure what we're going to run into, it becomes an expensive service call. Next slide, please. So this is fire funding over the past decade, and the red line indicates, basically what those expenses have been. So you can see on your screen here that what that graph looks like. And I think Ben's going to phase in some other ones. So here we have this is what the property tax revenue is off of these levies. And you can see that it's fairly flat over the last 10 years. So it's just not getting the job done. And if we add in other revenue from billings and the like, you can see where we're at. And then if we add in the transfers, that's how we're making it work, is by transferring money from the general fund to keep these operations going. If we take a look at the same format for EMS, you can see where this is at and how the property tax revenue fills in the EMS billing, and then other revenue and then transfers cover the rest. But what's important to note is that you look at, and we get into the slides in a few minutes, is the number of calls. So when we, years ago, decades ago, whatever it was before all of us were here, decisions were made, for nursing homes, skilled nursing facilities, adult centers. We're an aging demographic in North Canton. You recall about 2 years ago, we were named the 7th best retirement community in Ohio. That wasn't by design. We didn't try to become that. That's what we became because we weren't really cognizant of what we were allowing to be constructed here. And those things have a cost associated with them, particularly in the EMS side. Next slide, please. So if we look at over the past decade, the average sources of revenue, and keeping the color scheme consistent, you can see for fire and EMS what the property tax has provided. And in general, we are woefully short. And as these expenses continue to go up year after year and more calls are made, we're going to reach a point where so much of the general fund is being transferred over to maintain these operations that there's not going to be funds available for the other things that the city desperately needs to be doing. Next slide. So in 2020, we responded to 2,810 calls for service. We used the fire vehicle 6,618 times. We transported 1,589 people to area hospitals, provided life support for almost 2,000 people, and completed 2,089 inspections, plan reviews, fire education, or other prevention services. And fire and EMS helped at least 5,000 people and businesses just last year. And this is the benefit now, so we talk about the cost and we talk, I guess, the liabilities. Now we're talking about benefits. This is the benefits of running your own place and not having to merge and create a fire district, an EMS district, is that you can deliver this level of service. Stephanie's slide, in summary, you recall, the numbers that she had indicated, and basically, that hasn't changed. We're short, and we think that it's important that we have a transparent conversation with the community on what the costs are for the service that they expect. We think that once they understand that and they decide that, hey, that is a service that we want, we believe that they'll support a levy in the fall. But The levy proposal then is that we're going to, and this is important, is that we make sure this message gets out. We're talking about eliminating the 1.5 mils, and I'm not sure what comes after that, Ben, because my little thing that says I'm running my mouth is right over top of that.
1.5 mils of continuing levies.
Of continuing levies. Thank you very much. So eliminating the existing 1.5 mils of continuing levies, and then we would be replacing the fire levy with a 1.9 mil levy for the next 5 years. Keep in mind here, we are not talking about continuing levies. We're not talking about putting a continuing levy back on. We want to make sure that the residents of this community have an opportunity to voice on a regular basis their pleasure or displeasure with the way their services are being run and what they're having to contribute to make sure that they run right. So this one for the fire would raise an estimated $850,000 annually. And then on the EMS side, a 3.9 mil levy would raise 1.75 annually. So in total, 5.8 mils replacing the 1.5 mils. And this would bring in approximately 2.6 million on an annual basis. So if these levies were to pass and be agreed to by the residents, this is kind of what it would look like. The fire fund, virtually all of that would be paid for. And then in the EMS fund, between property tax and EMS billing, that would pretty much cover that entire operation there. And, given that these are snapshots in time based on, what property valuations are determined by the county auditor, that, when these levies would come up for renewal, we would hope that we would have done our other job of economic development that would be bringing in a lot more capital investment, a lot more jobs, creating more demand for housing, and we end up with a upward property valuation that would help spread these costs out, particularly into the commercial realm where we really need the big dollar investment. Next slide. The cost to the homeowner. So the fire levy currently costs about $13 for every 100,000 of value, and the new levy would cost $60. So that would be an increase on the fire side to about $47 per 100,000 of value on an annual basis. The EMS levy, current levy costs $67 per 100,000 of value. You see the new levy would be $123. So that would be an increase of $56 per 100,000 of value. So the total cost, when you add those numbers together, would be $183 annually per 100,000 of value, which is an increase of $103 on 100,000 value per year. Next slide. Are we going backwards, or I think we did that slide.
It ends on this for question, summary, that kind of thing.
Very good. Gina, would you like to make some comments at this time before we take questions?
No, actually, I think that's a really comprehensive, Ben. I appreciate how you take all the numbers that we provide and you put them into these very explanatory slides. So I think it really tells the story. Patrick, of course, you explain it very well. So I can answer questions, but I really don't have anything to add. I think that was a very good presentation.
All right, we'll open it up then for questions.
Patrick, this is Daryl. Would you describe for us, I think we've done historically a very good job in structuring our fire and EMS. Would you care to, can you elaborate on that in terms of paid volunteers, full-time, et cetera? on how we're structured?
Certainly. Of course, you all remember back in the beginning, it was an all volunteer fire department, and we had the largesse of the Hoover Company that made all that possible. And many of the people that were the volunteer firefighters worked at the Hoover Company. But as time moved on, and as Hoover did too, we had to supplement volunteers with full-time firefighters, which we have been doing. And on the EMS side, the same thing, full-time EMS department. But along about, I don't know, probably 20 years ago, thereabouts, I think Mayor Rice or Mayor Held, whoever it was around that timetable, started the process of trying to do a more of a hybrid approach with the staffing levels and to try to help cut costs. And what we did was ended up being that, if we were hiring a full-time firefighter, they also had to be EMT, medical technician qualified, and be able to serve in both capacities. And then this would help us with keeping our payroll in line. And that has worked for a lot of years. But where we're now at in the last couple of years is that it's harder and harder to get the volunteer firefighters. That is an area that's not as popular as it used to be, and that we need to have full-time. The number of EMS runs has exploded in the last 5 years. I think you can all recall the previous mayor's State of the City addresses and the slides that they put up. And with those number of calls, you can't get all that done with the same level of people. So we've had to, increase that gradually over time. But as we look at what's happening in other communities, this is no different. Other communities face the same problems. They may have exited the volunteer side, though, a lot earlier than we have. At some point, that will be our fate, that we will have to replace those volunteers with full-time firefighters.
Thank you. That's exactly the point I was hoping you'd make.
Just to add a question on top of that, we saw that huge increase in the last 2 years. All right. So what, and people are going to ask this, so we probably should have this down. What has been the increase in our calls over the last 2 years, and the difference between administrative costs, raises, for example, other administrative costs? How many additional people have we hired over the last 2 years? Is that huge increase part of that, or is it a part of what we've been doing, by making more calls and making more? So that 2 years has been the big difference, it seems like, on that one slide in our total cost.
It's a great question, Mark. I think certainly in the last 2 years, the spike, you see that, and that's very obvious. It jumps out at you, but this has been an ongoing issue for, a long time. And it's just a matter of how do we want to address it. Gina and I could break out for our next discussion on this, those very points that you're driving at, so we can break out, the personnel, how many people that has changed, if there's any equipment needs that were different in these last 2 years than before. So I think it's a great one. I'd be happy to bring that back when we have our next discussion. We wanted to start this process early. We didn't want to wait, until the last minute and, do this. This is very, very important. And I want to just say a very serious topic for us, all of us, and we should give it that level of deep thought. So I appreciate those insights, and we'll bring that back for our next committee meeting.
Patrick, go ahead. I want to ask a question, but go ahead, everybody else. I'll do mine last.
Well, just one more, because I know we're going to be asking for this safety station. Okay, people bunch this stuff together. Are we going to be able to, or the community going to be able to do that, both of these? So they're going to look at the next one when the station comes up, is this the same thing? And say, well, we just gave this. I mean, gave this, group a lot of money here now. So are we trying to cut off too many branches of the tree in a very short period of time? Are we pruning too much? And I don't know when that's going to happen. The safety station ask. So
that's a considerable. There's a lot of moving parts to that,
mm-hmm.
and I don't think that we're going to be in a position in the relatively short time span to be able to deal with that. So that's why I felt that it was more important to talk about the operating, because regardless of whether that we build it in a new building or not, the shortfall in the operating costs are going to remain the same. So you can put it in a new building, it's going to be the same. It's just that you have to pay for a new building. So we think that we need to get this house in order first before we go down the road of the other. So I don't see that happening, in the next short period of time, in the next year or two.
Okay.
But your point's well taken.
Yeah, Patrick, I have a few comments, and just to echo what Mark said, those are great questions, and I think you're right. We do need to get those answered to get out in front of those. You certainly have demonstrated the need from an operational standpoint. What I like about it, and what we've always done for as long as I've been on council, anytime we go to the voters for any type of levy, there's always a sunset provision on it. And this one is 5 years. And, you've got 5 years to prove that you're using that money in the proper manner, and you're a good steward of the taxpayers' funds. So, the folks will get another crack at the apple in 5 years to see if you've proved what you've said you were going to do. So I do like that.
Thank you. I think that, comes from, having sat in your chairs, not a fan of the continuing levy.
I'd like to make a comment if I could, Mr. President.
Yeah, Mayor.
Again, good discussion. That 5-year window, yes, that is key for us as we strive for economic development for the city, for income tax, property tax force. I think we have the potential for projects to go forward, and it gives us a window to recoup, I guess, the money that we're contributing to the EMS and fire. I think from what I can see, we have about 13 full-time firefighter paramedics and approximately 23 or 24 part-time firefighters and medics. Some are firefighters and some are medics. Things that consideration too is the amount of training also that goes into what we provide for our citizens. A qualified person arriving at their door when they call 911, and the restrictions that are being placed on the fire department and agencies for increased training and decontamination now issues. So it's just, I think when I came into office, in working with the city administrator and finance, trying to look at how best are we funding all of our services. And this was a very glaring point of view, I guess, when it comes to looking at the funding for all of our safety services. And the challenge now is before us to how we can best keep the quality services that we provide for our community. This is one of the avenues that you may have to take. So just my thoughts on it. Thank you.
Is everybody good? Can I chime in now?
Yeah.
Let me go before you, Don, just to piggyback off of the mayor. This is Troya. I view this as one that it's not continuing. It expires in 5 years. I think that's a definite transparency pro right there. But if anybody's ever had to use the services, they know that it's, we have first class services here. And I view this as just a way to continue that first class service.
I agree.
So can I chime in now, Dom here?
Yeah.
So when we were looking at that graph of the real estate evaluations, now keep in mind, they're usually slower to catch up to the reality. So I'm in the trenches every day. So this is what's happening in the real estate world in Ohio, as well as Stark County, and of course, North Canton and Jackson and surrounding areas. So in Ohio, our evaluation's up $23,000 this year. And we're 55% lower of inventory this April of homes to sell versus last April, 55% lower in Ohio. And in the suburbs, it's even a little bit worse. So what's happening is there's about 5 or 7 offers for every house hitting the market. So if anybody's watched carefully, is, for example, a 129 is now a 179. Something that you would think wouldn't be that expensive is up substantially. And you might even notice it on your tax bills. You know how you get them every year, they show you what the evaluation is. So we're going to start seeing some aggressive adjustments in our tax base. And if that in fact affects the, mills generating more revenue, that's going to be working in our favor, at least for the next couple of years. Now, in the commercial side, I see that struggling. So with the tools we put in place, the CRA, DRD, the door and so forth, we really need to rev that piece of it up to kind of soften it from the constituents taking the burden. Because honestly, I believe, in my mind, I'm thinking that the part we're missing is we're going to see a lot more evaluation dollars coming in from our property values. And I'm telling you, I've never seen the market like it is now in my 33 years. So within the next 6 months or so, you're going to start seeing some aggressive changes in pricing. So we're going to generate more revenue there. So if we're on that trajectory, maybe we can soften the mills a little bit and still be A-okay. So I'm just telling you from a real estate standpoint, someone that's dialed into the marketplace, there's a huge thing going on in the residential world, and that's affecting our suburb. Okay, that's all I have.
And I'd like to comment on 2 points that Dominic made there. One, I'd like to correct, and the other I would like to augment. So on the augment side, on the commercial, he's right. He's so right. The commercial property investment in the community, is very lagging, very few and far in between. We've had, the great shot in the arm from Akron Children's Hospital, but what last one before that one? We need to get like Akron Children's Hospital like deals, all the time, every year, so that commercial valuation can share more in the millage that's generated. But on the correction side, I want Dominic is accurate when he says that the valuations are going up and that you will start to see that. But keep in mind that that's not how a levy works. So the levy is going to say, how much money is it that you need to raise? And based on the valuations at the time the levy is approved, how many mills do we need? That's what you have right now before you that we've discussed. So next year, if the valuations on properties go up, the millage, the net dollar amount is still going to be the same. That really, the effect that Dominic's, I think, illustrating really will come into play at the time that the levy would come up for renewal in 5 years, where we would be able to capture all the new higher, hopefully still higher property values at that time. But for the next 5 years, we're going to be generating X amount of money that we told the auditor that we needed to generate off of these levies.
Right. It's like a school levy where you take a snapshot and it stays there for that entire levy.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So in November, in fact, if it goes on and it passes, the 5.8 mills that generate 2.6 mills, $1 million we're looking for. Whatever the evaluations of the current properties are at that moment in time, it's locked in for 5 years. Do I understand you correctly?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Thanks for clarification.
Hey, this is Daryl. I want to want to underscore a couple points and make a sort of vague observation, I guess, probably not very articulate. I think it's important that when we talk about police and fire, we understand that there's kind of a critical balance in our municipal finances. I mean, we're talking about what we're doing now is we're subsidizing these activities. We have other critical activities in the community. We have a police department that has requirements and may have future requirements as well. We have critical neighborhood infrastructure that may or may not be covered by grants that requires updating and maintenance. We have a park system that is currently unsupported by its own funding stream. My point is that you want to make sure that your activities don't get out of balance. And I think that's the merit behind this proposal, is that it's trying to restore that balance a little bit in terms in our financing. We probably, we could go to other schemes, and there are other schemes out there for EMS and fire. For example, we could contract with somebody to provide ambulance service. I'm not sure the residents would like that very well. We could contract with an entity for fire protection. I'm not sure at the end of the day that would serve us well. So it's important that if we don't want to go to those other options, we want to retain and in effect our homegrown approach, which we've modified, as Patrick said, over the course of time. We've adjusted to the various requirements imposed upon us with this unique mix of volunteers and full-timers, that we make sure that we fund it adequately. And, it doesn't hurt to remind ourselves that, a fire truck's worth $500,000 to $750,000 to $1 million. An ambulance is worth somewhere north of what? 150, 175, Patrick?
Oh, you're way low there, my friend.
Well, it's been a while since I bought one.
Yes, 400,000.
But my point is this, when you look at the numbers, the bus is out of the garage quite a bit. And I think the last thing we want is somebody who's on an emergency run to have an ambulance that fails. So it's important, again, that we maintain this critical balance. Patrick and I think Dominic have touched upon this. The reason that we are so engaged in economic development is because we are trying to spur capital investment in this community. I know we've talked about a CRA, but the reality is this, and I think we know from the numbers from the presentation, you only need a CRA in rare occasions. And, we got Diebold going in across the street. Patrick, what do we think that building's worth?
They're putting in a $14 million building.
Right. No CRA on that.
Equal to the Children's Hospital.
Equal to Children's Hospital. And we all know we've had some general private discussions about Kmart, and we know that there's no CRA up there. But we need monies for economic development. And so I think, again, we're not out to pass out property tax, incentives. We don't necessarily need them. We've got proof that we don't. So, as Patrick said, the whole goal here is to drive capital investment to attract as much as we can, and you attract it through good services. We want to spread that cost out by adding more valuation to our corporation. So again, critical balance is really, really critical here in my view. So there you go. My 5 cents.
If I can, I'd just like to jump in with the process of getting this on the ballot. So step one, and what we're asking from you tonight, are two resolutions that essentially ask the county auditor formally, how much would we raise if we levied this many mills? And these two resolutions are non-binding and do not put this question on the ballot. They are solely to ask the auditor, how much money would we raise? Only after we get back an answer to that question can we pass the second resolution, which would actually put these on the ballot. So tonight what we're asking is that council authorize for the next regular council meeting two resolutions on emergency to ask that question to the county auditor.
Okay, thank you, Ben.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
this is Revolt. Do we have any other discussion?
I'm good.
If we don't, I will make a motion for next week that we have two resolutions with emergency clause to query the auditor to provide estimates for fire levy and an EMS levy. That is my motion.
All right. Is there a second?
Destroy
We
a
have-
second.
Stroy seconds. Ben, is that a voice vote or roll call?
It could be a voice vote.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Mr. President, with the chair of the committee's indulgence, would it be appropriate at this time for me to make sure that we could get a committee meeting for Monday, May 3rd for this topic? I want to bring back to Councilman Sorretta's questions and be able to bring all that information back. And
That'd be
I'm
great.
not sure what the schedule is, but if that would be okay, Chairwoman Waring.
Yeah, I think Pat, you and I talked about that the other day, so that would be great. And maybe there's other questions some of you have, and maybe you want to do your own research and see what other city and townships are doing. That'd be a good time to bring that back prior, and then Patrick or Gina or Ben could get us answers.
Okay.
Okay, Ben, we'll put that on the, excuse me, the May 3rd committee. Excuse me 1 second. All right, thank you. The May 3rd committee.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, does that conclude finance and property? All right.
It does.
Moving on. All right, moving on. Thank you, Steph. Water, sewer, and rubbish. Chairman Sorretta.
Yes, rubbish. There's two ordinances here, and the first one, if I understand what has been explained to me, is when it's about, I guess, giving some sort of payment option to outside people who want to hook up to our line. When someone wants to hook up to our city water at this time inside the city, it's like $25 for a front foot cost. And sometimes that can be a tremendous amount of money. So we offer a payment plan to assist these owners in helping them pay that off, because we want them to hook up. I mean, we want the business of water. But we don't do this for outside users. And from what I understand from what Pat explained to me here, and I'll let him talk about it, for outside users, this is a way to give them a payment plan that has to do with footage and so on. Pat, anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I think you've covered it real well. I would just say that in the last, 12 months, we've had probably, 8 or so individuals contact us just in the last 12 months, and in talking with staff involved in this area. It's, we get those kind of questions every year. Ultimately, maybe one of the 8 decide to connect. One of the last ones did, to your point of how much it cost, it was in the area of over $3,000 to connect. And if you're outside the city, previous ordinances said you had to pay it in full up front. And when people had to do that, they just said, well, I can't do that, so I guess I won't connect.
Right.
So to your point, I'm very cognizant of what you had said in previous meetings. The more customers that we can get on our system, the more we can spread out those costs, our fixed costs to them. And when you have willing people to come in, I think it's reasonable to give them what everybody else has, which is basically 12 months, divided up into 12 payments, pay it. If for some reason they decided they would go back on their payments and quit paying, obviously we shut off their water. So I think we have a lot of enforcement mechanism there, and that they would likely go through with the payment plan.
Mm-hmm. Pat, point of question here is our footage fee $25 the same inside as it is outside? I can't remember that.
Yeah, the footage fee is the same.
Okay.
And boy, if you got a corner lot,
yeah,
you got a lot wrapped into it. So that's a complicated formula, Mark, that went into effect basically in developments. We've put in a water line and we've incurred an expense, and we know that water line will have to be replaced. And so we build into our rate structure, the cost to replace these lines. So we feel that it's fair to charge people who are not in our system.
Right.
The others who are in our system have had to pay to connect, and that's that $25
Right.
linear foot.
And we do maintenance throughout the years by flushing out and all that too. That's part of that.
Oh yeah.
Do it, not
we got a regular program to flush the hydrants. We camera all of our lines, and put it on the GIS. It just because there's not a water line break doesn't mean that the water department, distribution department, is not actively engaged in maintenance.
Patrick.
Yes, sir.
So basically, when you use the water lines that we do, they're usually good for 50 years, typically a water line that we use?
I would say at least that, yeah.
Okay. And then the other thing is, let's say, I'm a new business coming in. I want to, I'm across the street. I want to hook in. And, if I have some income potential, I guess we could probably negotiate a different arrangement. Could we? And then the other thing is, what if I can't make the monthly payment? Could I do it on my taxes every 6 months, have it assessed? Like if I had a sewer or something where I could have it, instead of paying the monthly payment out of my pocket, could I just roll it into my taxes?
Typically, on the tax side, that's reserved for when we do an assessment. That's an arrangement that is worked out with the county auditor. For those that
sewer, for example.
We've done that in the past when the city was building out, and whole streets were being done at one time, and we allowed people to pay up front or to do the assessment on their taxes, but that was part of a big project. Here the project's already done.
I see.
And so I'm not sure that would really work.
Actually, at the top of this, Don, you'll see about the second sentence. It says where connection cost is not paid by assessment. So this is not an area, I don't believe.
Okay, so he's just saying that's
right.
Hit and miss when we already have the lines out there. They want to run the footage across the property line, however many feet you have. Plus, then you hire your own plumber to connect it up, correct?
Yeah, so we have as an example, a good one is that we have our water lines that go down Mount Pleasant, and there's a lot of people on Mount Pleasant that have wells, and they would love to hook up to our system, but they can't afford to pay the upfront. Our line's already there. Why not recoup some of that if it's simply allowing them to get on a payment plan?
Right. I think that's a good plan. And especially if if I have 100 foot of frontage and it's $25, I can quickly figure that out.
Yeah.
Right.
That I can swing it or not.
So that's 12 months. Any other questions from the group?
No, thanks.
Okay. So I assume, of course, we'll put this on. There's no other issues with it. I think it's a great idea, Pat. Gina, and whoever came up with that, I think that's a good fare to get us going with some of these waters. The second ordinance.
We need a motion to
Oh, we
move
do?
the
Okay.
one forward.
Well, let's do that.
Revolt will motion.
And Soretta will second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Okay, the second one here is, it's about, and I had to read this and let me just take it through what I think it is and some history here, and then someone else can talk about it, Pat or someone here. It's a North Kent Source Water Protection Committee. You know, before, we had this before. When I first came on, there was one, and they were a group of citizens for the most part, very respected, but they didn't always have the information and the engaged experts that were there, you know, and many of the times, in my opinion, at the time, I thought they could easily go over the head of the water superintendent who was the expert. So at one point it was dismantled. But I do think we need representation from the people, and that's part of who we are as council people, and the mayor or those elected officials. So I look at this here, and so this is a water source protection, and they do make some, maybe Pat, you can explain what they actually do as far as what is going to be the role of these folks.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for that and that history too. And there was a committee, but that was right about the time you came on council and members Revolt and I were leaving. And ultimately that committee never enacted, it did kind of fail, never enacted what was the important focus of the group. And this has become very much more important today. So I'll explain what that is. The purpose of the committee is to protect the source of our drinking water, wherever those sources are. Now, this is critical because a lot of the legislation has changed in the last few years on this that works to give municipalities that are in the water business the ability to better protect their drinking water sources. So for instance, we have a lot of wells outside of our municipal boundaries. And what happens around those wells as far as development and the types of establishments that might go in near it could affect the quality of the water going to those wells. By establishing a source water protection committee and then adopting a source water protection plan, which we are drafting with help from the Ohio EPA, we will be able to extend our influence over the development patterns around where our drinking water is obtained. So it's not just the well head, it's the well field, and wherever that goes, how far it goes, that feeds into where we've placed that well. And, you know, we can look at, you know, some ongoing new concerns that we have with the use of property just outside our city limits in Plain Township and what's happening there, because it's near a well field on East Maple and feeds that. It's very shallow, and the speed of contaminants, if there are any that could move to that area, we want to make sure that isn't happening. Likewise, you know, over, you know, to the west of us in Jackson Township, we want to make sure that the development that is going over there is taking this into account. So through the Source Water Protection Committee and the adoption of this plan, the plan, once adopted here, would be extended to cover all of the well field sources that are outside the city. But we can't extend our influence out there if we haven't put this plan into effect in here, which we did not do in 2011. So we kind of queued it up, but it never went anywhere. And there were a lot of factors for that. So what we want to make sure is that when we do this time, that the professionals who are dealing with this on a regular basis, the superintendent of the plant, the fire chief, the administrator, whoever it is that we put on this committee, that they're understanding what this is. This is not a political body where we're trying to leverage, our will over a community just because we have political leverage. That's not what this is about. This is really about making sure that we don't find ourselves out of business someday because some development somewhere didn't take into account, hey, they're building a gas station right next to our well field. And so that's kind of the overall big picture of it. There's a lot of steps yet to go, beyond this is getting the plan. That's probably the heaviest lift. And then that has to come back to council as well.
Okay, good. Any questions from any of the team members?
Nope.
Nope, good.
Okay, so this is basically then creating the committee. Is that what you're saying, Pat? This
Yeah,
whole
then
kind of thing
the
to get
committee's
going? Right.
the committee's job then is to get a plan developed.
Yep.
And then bring that back and get the plan formally adopted so that we have a governing document that is going to be for inside the city and for outside the city.
Okay. Well, then there's no other discussion points. I'll make a motion to put this on for a voting for next Monday, I believe it is.
Yeah, and this is under emergency, correct?
This under emergency? Okay.
Troy, a second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, folks, that concludes our agenda tonight. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Ready to move?
We're in second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Have a great evening, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.